The war had ended 3 months ago, but Adrian Locke still heard the screams in his sleep. He stood on the observation deck of the UN Valiant, watching the blue-green marble of Thessara Prime rotate slowly beneath him. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, almost serene, as if it hadn't been the site of humanity's last stand against the Krell swarm, as if Adrian hadn't personally led the suicide run that collapsed their hive mind network and saved 2 species from extinction. The metals on his dress uniform felt heavier than combat armor ever had. "Commander Locke?" A soft voice barely above a whisper broke his reverie. Adrian turned to find Ambassador Chen standing beside him, her expression unreadable. She wasn't alone. Behind her stood a figure so small that Adrian initially mistook her for a child, until he noticed the distinctly non-human features. Violet skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence, large amber eyes that dominated a delicate face, and hair that moved like silver smoke even in the still air. A Thessaran, one of the species he'd saved. "Commander, this is Lyra Ney of the Thessaran High Council," Chen said formally. "She has requested to speak with you personally." The tiny woman stepped forward. She barely reached Adrian's chest, her frame so slight she looked like she might blow away in a strong breeze, but her eyes held a weight that made Adrian straighten his shoulders instinctively. "Commander Locke," Lyra Ney spoke in heavily accented but clear English. "My people owe you a debt that spans lifetimes. You destroyed the swarm when we had accepted our extinction. You lost." She paused, pain flickering across her features. "So many of your own to save us." Adrian's jaw tightened. 47,000 human soldiers. He remembered every report, every casualty list. "We did what needed to be done." "Yes," Lyra Ney said softly. "And now we must do what needs to be done." Chen shifted uncomfortably. "Commander, the Thessaran Council has invoked an ancient custom. A life debt of the highest order. Since you personally saved their world, they have declared that—" She hesitated. "That one of their own must be bound to you in service and protection. A guardian, counselor, and companion for life." Adrian blinked. "I don't need—" "It is not about need," Lyra Ney interrupted gently but firmly. "It is about honor. About balance. You gave everything for us. We give what we can in return." She placed a small hand over her heart. "I have been chosen. I am yours, Commander Adrian Locke, until the stars grow cold." The words hit Adrian like a physical blow. He looked from the tiny alien woman to Chen, searching for the joke, the misunderstanding. That's slavery. I can't." "It is not slavery," Lyra Ney said, and for the first time a hint of steel entered her voice. "I am free to speak my mind, to guide you, to protect you as I see fit. But my fate is bound to yours. Where you go, I follow. If you suffer, I suffer. If you die—" She trailed off, but the implication was clear. "This is insane," Adrian said flatly. "I'm a soldier. I don't need a babysitter, especially not—" He stopped himself, but not quickly enough. Lyra Ney's expression didn't change, but something dimmed in her eyes. "Especially not one so small and weak? So useless in the battles you fight?" Shame burned in Adrian's chest. "I didn't mean—" "You meant exactly that," she said, not unkindly. "And you are not wrong. I cannot fire your weapons or command your ships. I am not a warrior like you." She stepped closer, tilting her head back to maintain eye contact. "But I am Thessaran, Commander. We do not survive through strength of arms. We survive through strength of mind, of spirit, of connection. You saved our bodies. Perhaps I can save something else." Adrian wanted to argue, to refuse, to send her back to her council and tell them their customs meant nothing to him. But something in those amber eyes stopped him. He'd seen that look before in the mirror. After too many sleepless nights and too many ghosts. The look of someone who needed purpose as much as they needed air. "Fine," he said, the word coming out harsher than intended. "But I'm not changing my life for this. You'll have quarters on the Valiant. Stay out of my way and we'll get along fine." If his coldness hurt her, Lyra Ney didn't show it. She simply bowed, a graceful movement that seemed to encompass genuine respect despite his rudeness. "As you wish, Commander." Chen departed with a sympathetic look that Adrian chose to ignore. He returned his attention to the viewport, expecting Lyra Ney to leave as well. She didn't. Instead, the tiny alien moved to stand beside him, her presence barely registering in his peripheral vision. They stood in silence for long minutes, watching Thessara Prime rotate below. "You know," Lyra Ney finally said, her voice so quiet Adrian almost missed it. "On Thessara, we have a saying. The deepest wounds are not carved by blades, but by the weight of those we couldn't save. Adrian's hands clenched into fists. I don't need... You scream in your sleep, she interrupted gently. The ship's crew whispers about it. They worry for you, Commander. You saved humanity, saved my people, but who saves you from the darkness that followed you home? Adrian wanted to rage at her, to order her away, to deny everything she was saying. Instead, he found his voice catching in his throat. Words he'd never spoken aloud suddenly clawing their way to the surface. 47,000, he whispered. I led them to their deaths. You led them to victory, Lyrene corrected. There is a difference, Commander. One you must learn before the guilt consumes what the war could not. She reached up, her small hand barely wrapping around two of his fingers. The gesture was so simple, so innocent, yet it carried a weight of understanding that Adrian hadn't felt since before the war. I am small, Lyrene said, and weak and perhaps useless in your eyes. But I am here, Adrian Locke, and I will remain here whether you rage or weep or hide behind walls of duty. This is my fate, my choice, my honor. Adrian looked down at the tiny alien woman who had somehow seen past his armor in minutes, when years of counseling had failed. He thought about sending her away, about maintaining the walls he'd so carefully constructed. Instead, he found himself asking, why you? Why did they choose you? Lyrene smiled, sad and knowing. Because I too know what it means to survive when you should not have. To carry the weight of the lost. To wonder if saving others was worth the cost to yourself. Her grip on his fingers tightened slightly. They chose me because I understand, Commander. And understanding sometimes is the greatest gift one can give. Adrian didn't respond. He couldn't. But he didn't pull his hand away either. Below them, the Thesara Prime continued its eternal rotation. A world saved by sacrifice. Now watching as one of its own tried to save the man who'd saved them all. It was, Adrian thought distantly, the strangest reward he could have imagined, and perhaps the only one that mattered.